On today's episode of the How Did It Happen podcast, I am doing part 2 of the 10 ways to have a better conversation. I was inspired to do this by Celeste Headlee's TED Talk that's been viewed millions and millions of times. And I did 1 through 5 last week's Friday episode, and today I'm doing 6 through 10. Those are: don't equate your experience with your guests. It's number 6. Number 7, try not to repeat yourself. Number 8, stay out of the weeds. Number 9, listen. And number 10, be brief. I hope you have fun with this. I had fun making it. Thank you. Hey everybody, it's Mike, and thank you for joining me for another Friday episode of the How Did It Happen podcast. These are the ones where I do them solo and I talk about something that's interesting to me. And this is a part 2. In last week's episode, I talked about the first 5 of the 10 ways to have a better conversation. I was inspired by Mike Rowe's podcast, and specifically by his guest, Celeste Headlee. She's an NPR journalist. She's an author. She's a speaker. She's a musician. She's got a wonderfully successful TED Talk, 13 million or more views on that. CelesteHeadlee.com. If you want to find out more about her, that'll be in the show notes. And as I said, last week I did 1 through 5, and here this week I'm going to do 6 through 10. And if you missed last week's, go ahead and listen to it. It's about 10 minutes or so. And she put these 10 ways together, 10 ways to have a better conversation together for her TED Talk. And I've just taken those 10 things and put my own spin on them based on my experience with almost 400 podcasts now. So here we go. Number 6 is: don't equate your experience with theirs. Don't equate your experience with theirs. So this is really important, because when you are having a conversation with someone and they are telling you their story, it is not an invitation for a one-upsman or one-upswoman competition. Okay. So their story, whatever it is, whatever experience they're sharing, is always going to be different than mine. And it's always going to be different than yours or whomever it is that you're having the conversation, even if it sounds kind of the same, because it's never the same. She says that in her talk. It's never the same. For me, and this is hard because we've been taught that, if someone has a like experience with you, that's a good, way to connect with them, a good way to empathize with them, or a good way to sympathize with them, or whatever. And it can be, it definitely can be, but it probably doesn't work as well when it is overtly like, I'm going to stomp on your story because I have one that's similar to it, and here it goes. I'm just going to go, because it oftentimes can come around as being like a one-upsman type of thing, like I mentioned. So to me, like when someone's sharing their experience with me, it's really about having grace. Like even if I can say, yeah, I've been in your shoes. I've been in similar shoes. I have not been in your shoes. And so I, to the best of my ability, deflect when my instincts say, okay, I've had an experience just like that. Tell it. Here's what it is. I may tell just a little bit of it because or I might hint at it, or I might say, yeah, I've been there, and that's it. I'll just leave it because it's really about them and their story and their experience. That's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm interested in sharing and letting them share. I mean, thankfully, they're sharing something like that with me and with all of you. Number 7, try not to repeat yourself. I hate when I repeat myself. And man, especially and I know I do it. Everybody does it, right? And it's kind of weird because as a leader, you have to repeat yourself all the time because, like the saying goes, when you get tired of hearing yourself say something, most people are hearing it for the very first time. And there is a lot of truth to that. But just like when my wife says, oh yeah, you told me that already, I go, damn it, I just don't like that, because I don't like it when it happens to me. So when I'm doing a podcast, I try so hard not to, and it's impossible not to repeat any story ever, but I try really hard not to repeat myself because it's boring. There are 2 podcasts that I've used to listen to, and they've got good audiences and stuff, but it was like every single episode, the one podcaster, for example, would tell you this exact same story, every single podcast. And the other one that I'm talking about, or I'm thinking of right now, is similar. It may not be the exact same story, but it's one that in both cases, these are guys that he's told over and over and over again on his podcast. And it's just like, okay, that's enough. I do my very, very best not to repeat myself. And when I do, I'm aware of it. And I go, damn it. And I want to avoid that. So it's boring. So try not to repeat yourself, even though I've repeated myself on that a few times now. Number 8, stay out of the weeds. Stories are very interesting, but it's really easy to go down a rabbit hole in a story, especially if you're really interested in the particulars of it, and lose everyone who is listening. People, in my experience, they want to know about you. They want to know about what's happened. They're good with some details, but if I start getting too far in, and I'll admit that I do that sometimes, it begins to be very boring. Or people, it maybe not even boring, but people just lose interest. Like, it's like a movie where there's too many characters with names you can't pronounce. After a while, you're just like, I can't pronounce the name of those characters, and there's too many of them. So I begin to lose interest in their individual stories. And I think that's what it's like when you get into the weeds. Number 9, listen. So most of us don't listen. This is Stephen J. Covey, right? Most of us don't listen with the intent to understand. We listen with the intent to reply. So rather than actually letting our ears do the work, we're basically covering our ears. We're not even hearing what the person is saying because we are so ready to come back with whatever our next question was or whatever our next thought was. And that is not going with the flow, which is number 4. That is not going with the flow. And it also, I think, makes you more of an arguer, or you miss a lot. And it makes for a single-sided conversation because you're always trying to be the smartest person in that conversation. So I track how much I talk to listen on my podcast, and typically it's around 80-20. 80-20, I listen versus talk. And sometimes I feel like, well, maybe it should be higher because, a conversation, a regular conversation maybe isn't 80-20, but the more I think about it, I think it's the right balance, because that's my job. My job is to ask a question that gets somebody talking about an experience, and then make sure that we don't get too deep in the weeds, but we let it go long enough where the person has a chance to share their wisdom, their experience, their story. And so listen, 80-20. I think it's a good ratio for podcasts or for any conversation. And number 10 is be brief. It's kind of weird because these Friday episodes are brief. They're 10 minutes, or so. My Monday episodes are an hour, give or take. And so it's not really brief, but I like to think that the points that we're making and the things that we're covering in the podcast or in the conversation are, when you break them all down, all brief. And for me, at least in the 80-20 thing I talked about in number 9, listen, I'm definitely brief with my comments and my dialogue in the conversation, and it feels comfortable to me to be brief. So I think Celeste's point in making this was there's no need to say more than needs to be said, and I don't know that I can top that much. So it's a good place to end. That's number 10 of the 10 ways to have a better conversation. Be brief. So thank you for investing your time with me today. I hope you got some value out of this podcast and the time that you've invested in it. If you like what I'm doing, please subscribe to the show or follow the show or share the show, because I could use the support. And I think there's a lot of people who want to be impacted by the type of thoughts and the type of people that I'm sharing with the world. So thank you for that. And until next time, maximize your greatness, make your future your property that you will be proud to own. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the show. And before you go, I just have 3 requests for you. 1, if you like what I'm doing, please consider subscribing or following the podcast on whatever podcast platform you prefer. If you're really into it, leave me a review, write something nice about me, give me 5 stars or whatever you feel is most appropriate. Number 2, I've got a book. It's called Owner Shift: How Getting Selfish Got Me Unstuck. It's an Amazon bestseller, and I'd love for you to read it or listen to it on Audible or wherever else, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. You can get it everywhere. If you're looking for inspiration that will help you unlock your greatness and potential, order or download it today so that you can have your very own copy. And if you get it, please let me know what you think. Number 3, my newsletter. I do a newsletter every Thursday, and I talk about things that are interesting to me, or I give more information about the podcast and the podcast guests that I've had and the experiences that I've had with them. You can sign up for the podcast today at my website, which is my name, MikeMalatesta.com. You do that right now, put in your email address, and you'll get the very next issue. The newsletter is short, thoughtful, and designed to inspire, activate, and maximize the greatness in you.